especially in the U documentary, how just kind of just like they really put you in the moment, like the attitude of these guys. Yeah, they're football playing days. Some of them are a decade or more behind them, but they still have this kind of, when they're talking about it and when we interview them, they have a real youthful exuberance, and they really are back in the moment. We had a great experience doing this U sequel where a lot of the players, like you're talking about specific moments in time, specific incidents, particular games, particular plays, and they really just like take you right back there. Like they're not only telling you the story, but they're really feeling like the pain and the anguish and the suspense and or the excitement, the elation. I mean, they're so vivid. They're such vivid characters and storytellers that it's just, sometimes that's just dumb luck.
Mm-hmm.
So, without giving too much away, what can you tell us about the sequel?
Well, it picks up right where the U 30 for 30 left off.
Terrific.
And interesting thing about that is that when we first pitched the documentary to ESPN, 30 for 30 didn't even exist then, and the title was Hurricane Season. That's what we called it at the time. Before, it was later changed to the U. And we had envisioned from the start that we would, when we conceived it, that we would cover all 5 national championships that Miami had won over less than 20 years with four different head coaches. And we realized pretty quickly after we started shooting that was a little too ambitious. We probably were biting off more than we could chew. And so while we were shooting some of the early interviews with some of the later players, we said, okay, we need to reel this in a little bit, focus on Miami as the team of the 80s, as they were called, and really Miami's team in the 1980s. And that's what we focused on. So the first one really became about the first 4 national championships that all happened between 83 and 91 with 3 different head coaches, and never flash forward to another decade in 2001 when they won that other national championship. And the thing that's so crucial about that team, that 2001 Miami Hurricanes championship team, is that they're not only considered one of, if not the greatest college football team of all time, but they are one of the greatest NFL teams of all time.
That team's riddled with so many of the players.
The talent is insane. So you've got 17, that is 17 first-round draft picks. You've got a total of 38 players that went on to be drafted and play in the NFL. I mean, those are staggering numbers. The 2004 class, all of whom had played in that 2001 team on that roster, they had still to this day, I believe it's a record, 6 first-round draft picks from one college class in that year. I mean, just crazy statistics and crazy talent, and the names, from that era, even pre-2001, the names from that era, Ed Reed and Jeremy Shockey and Ray Lewis and Damian Lewis and Philip Buchanan and Jonathan Vilma and Santana Moss, Ken Dorsey. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's just it's just crazy the amount of talent that came out of that program in that era that we didn't even talk about in the first movie. And so it's like it really just seemed like a natural. I've been pitching it to ESPN since 2009. I always said we should do a sequel. We should do a sequel and do the 2001 team. And finally this year they came to us and said, hey, do you want to do a sequel? And we're like, of course. We've been saying that for years. We want to do a sequel. So now we get our opportunity.
Some young guy showed up from university and threw the idea, and then they listened to him or something, right?
It's like, I was like, wait a second. We've been talking about this since 2009, probably even earlier, because when we first came to them with the movie, it was like 2006 or 2007, and we had always wanted to do 2001 team. So it was pretty funny when they called us up as if like we may or may not be interested. It's like, hell yeah, we're interested.
It's probably an ESPN intern came up with the idea.
Were you attending?
They can take the credit for it as long as I get to make the movie.
That's right.
Were you attending Miami U at this time? Around the time that you're going to be covering next? Yeah.
Actually, very, very astute observation. This is my era I was a freshman in the fall of 1996.
Amazing.
So, so they were just trying to get their act together. It was shortly after they had hired Coach Butch Davis, who was really, if you have to credit one person, obviously it was a team effort, but if you had to credit one person with facilitating the turnaround, it would be Butch Davis. And so they had hired him in 95. A lot of tragedy, a lot of dark clouds at the start of his tenure. He comes in January of 95, and there's like an NCAA investigation of like 3 or 4 scandals that are happening. You've got pay for play with Luther Campbell, Uncle Luke, which we discussed in the first movie. You have a Pell Grant scandal where you had an academic advisor working in the athletic department who for years had been defrauding the federal government out of loan money for underprivileged students to help finance his cocaine habit. It doesn't get more Miami than that, I don't think. And finally, speaking of Miami, you had a drug test scandal where they had alleged that the coaches were covering up failed drug tests of prominent players. For example, it was extensively reported by 15 sources that Warren Sapp had failed 7 drug tests, 6 for marijuana, 1 for cocaine as a student at the university. No disciplinary action had been taken at the time, naturally. We're not really big on accountability down here in South Florida. And so this is how Butch Davis's tenure started. So he comes in January of 95 after Dennis Erickson leaves for Seattle, goes to the NFL.
Right. Yep.
He, in the summer of 95, this is now not 6 months after he's arrived in Miami, the cover page, the front page of Sports Illustrated says why the University of Miami should drop football. That's the front page of one of the biggest, most widely circulated and most respected sports periodicals of that time. And he's suspending players left and right. Come December, the NCAA cuts 31 scholarships, which basically puts him in there to try to turn this program around with his hands tied behind his back. Then in 96, in the spring, shortly before I went to the University of Miami, Marlon Barnes, very popular player, was beaten to death in his on-campus apartment in a absolutely brutal and violent and horrendous act of violence on campus. So it was just like it was really one thing after another for a while for Butch Davis. And I get there 96 as a freshman. I was not qualified to be a water boy, so I was just a fan. But then the 97 season was the worst. It was the first losing season since 1979. I'll put it to you that way. So things were not going well at that point, and that's where our story really, really begins.